Hey folks, today we're diving into something really special, the end of an incredible chapter in automotive history. We're going to talk about the very last original Volkswagen Beetle that rolled off the production line in 2003, and why this car continues to capture hearts even decades later. The final production day. You know, it's fascinating to think that while most cars come and go, the Beetle's story spans over 6 decades. The final Classic Beetle was produced on July 30th, 2003 at Volkswagen's Puebla plant in Mexico. This wasn't just any factory. This was the last place on Earth still making the original Beetle. Think about that for a moment. While the rest of the world had moved on to newer models, Mexico kept the Classic Beetle alive for an entire generation longer. The last Beetle, El Rey. Let me tell you about that final Beetle. It was a beautiful Aquarius blue model, and they called it El Rey, the King. How fitting for the last monarch of a car that democratized transportation for millions. This wasn't just the end of a production line. It was the end of an era that began in 1938. Why production ended? But why did they stop production in 2003? Well, there were several factors. Modern safety standards were getting tougher, and the classic Beetle design, despite its charm, couldn't keep up. Consumer preferences were changing, and new environmental regulations were coming into effect. But here's what's remarkable. It wasn't because people stopped loving the car. In fact, the Beetle was still selling steadily in Mexico right up until the end. The enduring appeal. Now let's talk about why this car remained so beloved even after production ceased. First, there's the simple, reliable engineering. These cars were built to be fixed by anyone with basic tools and a manual. No computers, no complex electronics, just straightforward, honest engineering. This philosophy made the Beetle more than just a car. It became a friend you could count on. Preserving the legacy. The Beetle's legacy lives on in so many ways. Look at any classic car show today. You'll always find at least a few Beetles drawing crowds. They'd become collector's items, sure, but more than that, they're family heirlooms. I've heard countless stories of Beetles being passed down through generations, each scratch and dent telling a family story. The museum piece. That final 2003 Beetle now sits in Volkswagen's museum in Wolfsburg, Germany. But its legacy? That's still very much alive on roads worldwide. The last Beetles made in Mexico are particularly special. They represent the culmination of decades of subtle improvements while maintaining the classic design everyone loves. The living community. You know what's really incredible? Even though production ended in 2003, there's still a thriving community of Beetle enthusiasts keeping these cars on the road. Parts are still being manufactured, clubs are still meeting, and restoration projects are still happening in garages all over the world. That's not just a car's legacy, that's a cultural phenomenon. Record-breaking numbers. The 2003 end of production marked more than just the final car. It was the end of the longest-running and most manufactured car of a single platform ever made. Over 21.5 million Beetles were produced worldwide. Just let that number sink in for a moment. Cultural impact and design legacy. As we wrap up, let's remember that the last Beetle wasn't just the end of a production line. It was the final chapter of a car that changed how we think about transportation. It showed us that a car could be more than just a means of getting from A to B. It could be a symbol of freedom, reliability, and joy. The Beetle taught us that great design doesn't need to be complicated, that a car can have personality, and that sometimes the simplest solutions are the best ones. Even though production ended in 2003, the Beetle's influence on automotive design and culture continues to this day. So next time you see a Beetle on the road, remember, you're not just looking at a car. You're looking at a piece of automotive history that earned its place in our hearts, 1 mile at a time. That's all for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this journey through the legacy of the last Volkswagen Beetle. Until next time, keep those classics rolling.